अब बोलना बोलना।
हेलो हेलो।
हेलो। हेलो। हेलो हेलो हेलो। ठीक है। साउंड नहीं आ रही इनकी अभी। सारा गड़बड़ होगी। बंद कर दिए म्यूजिक डाल। हम बंद कर दिए। मैं क्या बीच में 15 मिनट में याद चल रहा है। ठीक है ना बाकी कुछ कुछ देखने वाला नहीं है। 6 लोग नहीं देख रहे हैं।
This meeting is being recorded.
हेलो हेलो। मीटिंग का लिए चलते हैं। पोस्ट बना दो मेरे को। पोस्ट बना दो सर। हेलो हेलो। स्क्रीन शेयर बंद कीजिए। मेरी आवाज क्यों नहीं आ रही? हेलो। कितने लोग? मेरी अभी तो कुछ नहीं है। ऐसे भी कोई पूछता नहीं। पूछा कि परिवार किसने? एक सवाल आया था किसी को। किसने वो फोन किया भाई? नहीं कल एक सवाल आया था। अब जुड़े हुए चलो। मेरी आवाज क्यों नहीं आ रही? मेरी आवाज निकालो। हेलो
तो माइक ऑन है।
हेलो 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 हेलो।
ठीक है ठीक है। सर मेरे को पोस्ट बना दिया। स्क्रीन शेयर बंद कीजिए अपना। अपनी स्क्रीन शेयर बंद कीजिए।
मैं शेयर नहीं करके।
Hello everyone, welcome back. Welcome back for the second session of the Bhatnagar Day. It is an honor to introduce Professor Hussain Rahmani, a distinguished figure in the realm of optics and photonics. Hussain Rahmani is a professor and leader of the Advanced Optics and Optics Laboratory at Nottingham Trent University, UK. He obtained his PhD from National University of Singapore in the year 2013, and this was followed by a postdoc fellowship at Imperial College London and the Australian Research Council Early Career Fellowship at Australian National University. In 2020, he joined NTU via prestigious Royal Society Watson Fellowship. Shortly after moving to UK, he was also awarded by the UK Research and Innovation Future Leaders Fellowship His research activities span over light matter interactions with nanometer scale particles for applications in flat optics, near-infrared imaging, biosensing, and reconfiguring optics. He is recipient of several prestigious awards and prizes, including the Australian Eureka Prize, the Early Career Medal from International Union of Pure and Applied Physics, and the Australian Open Society Jeff Opat Award. Professor Rehmani has delivered 40 plus invited talks, seminars, and keynotes in international conferences and has published more than 80 peer reviewed journal papers. He has an impressive H index of 43. He was the past chair of IEEE Nanotechnology chapter across the UK and Ireland section and a distinguished lecturer for IEEE Nanotechnology Council in 2024. I extend a warm invitation to him and request him to grace us with his presence and enlighten us with his knowledge and research on metaservices. We welcome you, sir. Before the talk, I would we do the after. Sorry, after this. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Kind introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's a real privilege and honor to be here It's a real honor and privilege to be here in such a great event, and I really enjoyed this event until now. So it was very inspiring for me. Both the speeches of the distinguished guests and also the lecture we had just before the break. So I understand that when it is the lunchtime, usually the enthusiasm, it goes down. So I try to make it more entertaining for you, and I try to make it short so that you can go for lunch quickly after this talk. So before I start, I want to just give you some introduction about myself, who I am, and then I will go and speak about my research. So here it's me. It's how I look like now, and I want to share my career pathway with you. Unfortunately, I don't have any direct degree in chemistry, but my research is very relevant, and I believe after my talk, you will admit that there are a lot of things in common with chemistry. So currently, I am a professor in nanotechnology and nanophotonics in the UK, Nottingham. Before that, I was a lecturer in physics in Australia for several years. Before that, I was a postdoc in physics again at Imperial College London in the UK. And before that, I got my PhD in electrical engineering in National University of Singapore. Before that, I got my master's in materials science in National Technical University of Ukraine, and I am originally from Iran, and I got my bachelor in mechanical engineering in Iran. So in the first glance, it may look like very fun, a lot of fun to change all these careers all the time and changing the countries from one to another. So, but in order to give you a flavor that what was the price I have paid for these changes and for this traveling, I share with you my photo before all of this. This is me before all of this, and this is on the top. It's me after all of this. So you can see that how much I have devoted myself to science and technology. So before I go, because I was not quite sure about the background of the people here. So is there anyone here who is not familiar with nanotechnology? Not familiar. Okay, good news. So directly then I can go to my research. I don't need to give a short introduction about what nanotechnology is. So I directly start speaking about my research results, which make your distance to the launch shorter, because I don't need to speak about the nanotechnology. Okay. So as it was mentioned, I'm from Nottingham Trent University, and obviously it is in Nottingham. Nottingham is right in the middle of the England. So if it doesn't ring any bell to your mind, I would like to remind you that Nottingham is the city of Robin Hood. Do you know Robin Hood? Okay, good. So if you come to Nottingham, it will be my honor to bring you and introduce you to Mr. Robin Hood. And actually, it's interesting because I was in China some time ago and I made the same presentation and I told them that it is a city of Robin Hood. And they told me, who? I said, Robin Hood, do you know Robin Hood? And they said, no. Who is that? Well, okay. So it is a city in the UK. So anyhow, so then Robin Hood, perhaps because you know the history of the UK and you know Robin Hood. So here in this city, it is the building in which I do my research. Unlike what you have, the impression you have about all the buildings and the universities in the UK that they are very old buildings. So my building of engineering, Department of Engineering, is actually very new. It's built a few years ago, and if you come there, you will see that a lot of interesting labs inside this building, including my lab. I have a very little group. We do a lot of interesting things, and today I'm going to share with you what I do. I do not go into the details of each direction. I just give you a flavor about what I do. I will introduce you different applications of what I have, what I have in mind, and what we can do with our nanostructures. And then if you are interested, you are very welcome to later to contact me, and we can have some other conversation about each of these different direction and different applications if you are interested. So before I give you some information and some flavor about my research, I would like to start with this introduction. This is how people used to look like 700 years before Christ. And this is how people look like now. And sometimes people look like this. But it doesn't matter. I believe you admit that the outfit of people has significantly changed from those years to these years. But if you look at the very first lens made 700 years before Christ, exactly at those ages, and the lenses we all are using in the backside of our mobile phone, you realize that we are using the exact same technology. Indeed, the lenses I'm using in my eyeglasses is the exact same way to shape the wavefront of the light that Galilei was using in his telescopes 400 years ago. So one-to-one, exact technology. But the good news is that right now, we are in the transition period of this technology, where an array of nanoparticles, so-called metasurfaces, whose dimensions are much, much smaller than the wavelengths of the light and also the separations, they can reproduce the function of these bulky elements like lenses, mirrors, from what we know, because the lenses, mirrors, prisms, and all of these bulky elements, the geometrical optics we know, they are much larger than the wavelengths of the light. But these arrays of nanostructures, they can reproduce that, the function, and on occasions, they can generate new functionalities that are not achievable by this bulky element. I will talk about them, and I hope I will make you interested by the end of my talk today. So, as I mentioned, my research in this area, when we design, generate, and characterize different nanoparticles for different applications, and the dimensions of them are much smaller than the much smaller than the wavelengths of the light. So the research in my lab are categorized to three different categories: engineering the propagation direction of the light, or we call it linear photonics. Engineer the frequency of the light, we call it nonlinear photonics, and engineer the intensity that we use it for biosensing. I will talk about each of them very briefly. So I'm not going to bore you with physics today because, as you already realize, some part of also my career has been in physics. So we are very much also involved in the physics of that. I will not really go into the details, but if you are interested, I'm happy to have some more chats and discussion with you after the time. So, but if I want to speak about this category, so how we can say that in a plain English, when we are using these nanostructures or when we are using this physics to shape the front of the light. So the plain English will be that the light frequency, wavelengths, the light color in general doesn't change. So it means that we only change the propagation direction of the light and so on. So here what we use a high refractive index nanoparticles where they can have this magnetic flux inside them. So they can get involved both electric and magnetic field of the light. And you can generate a lot of different resonances based by means of these nanoparticles. These resonances have different characteristics, and then they can be used for different applications. Based on the application we want, we design the geometry, the material, and a lot of other parameters of the metal surfaces to exhibit one of them and to suppress the rest so that we can use them for different applications. For example, we can use this shape of the nanostructure. So when we have these different diameters, as you see inside these metal surfaces, so we can control the phase on the surface of this nanostructure. So as a result, we can deflect the light. So it means that the entire beam is coming, so we can deflect it to any direction we want. So it doesn't need to be the full beam. So because as you see here in this illustration, the entire beam will be deflected. But it can be designed, the nanostructures can be designed that you can have different change in the propagation direction, so you can focus or defocus the light. So which is a very, very vibrant and heavy field of research around the world, so-called metal lenses. So it means that by an array of nanoparticles, we can reproduce the function of the lenses. So this is very crowded field of research, and almost in every university, people theory or experiment, they are doing that. So you need a very good reason to get into that. Otherwise, the competition is really, really tight in this field. So here is the application. Actually, we encourage us to get into this field. So this is a four-view device generated by our collaborators called Seeing Machine. It's a company in Australia, and this device already in many cars like Chrysler. So what it does, so it detects the eyes of the driver, so that when the drivers go asleep or they don't look just right away to the road, so or distracted, they alert the driver. So inside this this four-view device, so they used to use the actual lenses, filters, mirrors, and so on, the old-fashioned one which I was speaking about. So what we did, we made a prototype lens for them. So this lens is 20 times thinner than a human hair, and this is the image taken by our lens. This is an image of the exact same sample taken by electron microscopy. So this quality, as you see, this quality is not very good, but it was the very first prototype. We wanted to convince them to give us money to further do the research on that, and it actually worked. And by this image, they were very excited. So we indeed helped them to not only the lenses, the other six optical elements, we replaced them by metal surfaces. Unfortunately, because it is an industrial project, so because of the confidentiality, they don't let us to present them. But I want to tell you that our latest results on this metal lenses are much better than this. But so please accept from me that the opportunity is there, and the quality can be improved significantly. Another application in this direction is optical force. So you may have seen this kind of image in a lot of Hollywood movies. So that a UFO comes and they suck some people up or some animals or something, and they do some experiments on them. And perhaps every single time you saw that or you watched that, you thought that, oh, it is some imagination. It's not possible. It's not something that at the moment we can do. But indeed, we can do that, but not at this scale, at very small scale. And the way we do that is just very much the same concept of these antennas that we can see everywhere. So these antennas, as you know, so they capture and redirect the radio frequency. Also, in the TV also work the radio frequencies, the electromagnetic waves that is used for TV. So what they do, they redirect them to the last one, the last branch, and it sends it to the receiver. So in other words, they redirect the propagation direction of this radio frequency. So we did the same thing at very small scale when you did do the same thing by light. These antennas are made by gold, and with the right polarization, as you see over here, the polarization along this antenna, so we can redirect the light in one direction here. The scattered light will be scattered to one direction. Of course, when the polarization is not the right polarization, you don't have anything. But when you have a lot of these antennas, not a lot, several of these antennas next to each other, as you see over here, so there is enough force generated here by this redirecting of the light that it can move actually this a small element, which we call it nano vehicle. As you see over here, in the right polarization, so it moves in 1 second, 2 seconds, it moves and comes here. So in order to tell you that the importance of that, so I want to attract your attention to this scale bar, which is 400 nanometer. So I don't know if you know or not, the diameter of coronavirus is around 300 nanometer. So we are speaking about that dimension. So it means that literally this nano vehicle can give a ride to one single coronavirus. So here it's a video. I show you if it works, that how actually it moves by just shining light on it. So no wire, no battery, nothing. We just shine the light, and because of that mechanism of the design of this nano antenna, so it can move. So the application, very cool application of that is this another imagination of the human, to have some nano robots that can move inside the body. So the problem of those nano robots these days is the power, how we can generate power to just move those nano robots, because we can make something, but moving them is the problem, because we cannot use batteries or wires or something. So it is a very good way, because if we design such a nano robot by using the near infrared light that can pass through our body, so you can generate this optical force that they can move. So we are not there yet, but it is a good news that at least we know how to get there, and it is a big step forward towards that direction. Another beauty of these nanostructures is that they can generate more than one function. As I was telling you, the optical elements like lenses, they have only one focal point. So you cannot have one lens that have two different focal points. So for people like me who are bifocal, so you will get there. So don't feel that it's only me. You will get there soon. So then when you want to read, you have to change it, and it becomes at some point really annoying. So the reason is that you cannot have a eyeglasses that you press a button that it changes the focal point. But at nanoscale you can. So here is the beauty that we can with one component generate many functions, and it's called tunable metasurfaces. So this is very hot field of research. So and I put three techniques for tuning method. For example, you can fabricate these nanoparticles on a stretchable substrate, and then you stretch them, so the separation between them changes. Then the optical properties of the surface change. Or you can use doping, or using different phase change material that by changing the refractive index of them, you have different optical properties. And this is our way we came up to this research field, and we started this tuning. So it's heating. I'm not going to bore you with the physics, but just if I want to tell you the summary, that in 2017, we realized that if we have the silicon nanoparticles and they have some optical properties, by changing the temperature of them, we change the refractive index, and then by looking at certain wavelengths, so we can have the surface to be reflective or transmissive. So I want to remind you that at these wavelengths, silicon doesn't absorb light, so it is either reflection or transmission. So, but here, as you see, the biggest problem was that high temperature. So what we did, we designed some better nanostructures with better physics. As you see here, these nanostructures, I don't know whether you can see them clearly. There are some holes inside them. So these holes actually, they break the symmetry and let us generate these sharp resonances. So this yin-yang structure is fabricated based on these two building blocks, so which are resonant at very close by wavelengths over here. So as a result, so when you heat the sample at room temperature or only 150 degrees, so which is much less than 300 in the previous slide, so you can completely go from one phase to another. As you see, it is the exact same structure, and this is the image of the structure in the electron microscopy. And here is the optical image of the exact same structure, and you see that you can see this black and white. And when you heat it, you go from one phase to another. So it is a video. You can see that when we heat it, we go from one phase to another, and it can be used very nicely for changing the contrast of the image. And when it cools down, it goes back. So of course, here the problem you can challenge me is that, oh, it's so slow, so you cannot use it for many applications, because for real application, you need the fast. That's why we worked really hard to solve this issue. Sorry, I forgot to update it. This was actually published in last year, end of last year. So in light science and application. So here what we did, we solved that issue. We used a layer of ITO, and we have the silicon underneath. ITO is a conductive layer which is transparent, but it has some resistance. So when you apply voltage to this, so this, because of this resistance, you generate some heat, and that heat we transfer to its metal surface, and we do the same concept. We shift the resonances, and then we can have this small patch or a small metal surface that can be actually turned on and off. So we managed, by some electronics tricks, we managed to bring this switching time down to 625 microseconds, which is 20 times faster than what our eyes can see. So if I turn on this video, you see that we are changing the frequency of this. We are applying voltage on and off, on and off. It is the same structure, the same thing, very thin, really thin metal surface, around 30, 40 nanometer metal surface. And you see that we can turn it on and off and use it as an optical switch. And at some point, you cannot see that. You see here, you don't see that it's turning on and off. It's where it goes beyond the response of our eyes. So the good application of that is to using them for the actual pixels in the display. So, you know, all the displays around us, you perhaps have LCD. LCD stands for liquid crystal display. So in LCDs, LEDs, and all our monitors we have, there are several layers, so many layers. There's light source, we have filters, polarizers, a lot of different layers. But the most important layer is the layer of the liquid crystal. This is the layer that determines the resolution of the display, determine the power consumption. And this layer's job is just switch the light on and off. The generating colors, RGB filters, and everything else is different layers. But this is the most critical layer in the displays. So they cannot be so small, because in these liquid crystals, indeed, they use the actual liquid. You need the liquid. That liquid cells are already suspended. So by applying the magnetic field, you can just rotate them so that they can work as a switch to turn on and off the light. But here, we don't need any of them. We don't need any of those barriers. I'm not going to just go too much details, but what I'm trying to tell you, that this technology can increase the current resolution by 100 times of the displays we have. And more importantly, it can help us to save 50% of the power consumption, because it's completely different technology. It's not liquid crystals. It doesn't need polarized light. So it saves 50% of the light. So you can see these pixels we have made, and you see that we can turn them on and off on demand. So just imagine that how many monitors and how many displays we have around us, and if we can save 50% of power we need to run them, how much energy in total we can save in our world. So there are some comparison between them. So between the liquid crystals and metal surfaces, and we compare them, that what we can do with this concept, actually, the tuning concept. So this was the first part of research in my lab. The second part is here when we change the frequency of the light. We call it nonlinear optics because the intensity of the light is well beyond this linear part. And then in plain English, the light's color change. Previously, in the previous section where I was speaking the category of the research in my lab, we didn't care, we didn't touch the wavelengths, the frequency of the light. The input and output always the same color, the same frequency, just focusing, defocusing, switching it, and so on. But here, it's another story. We want to change the color and frequency of the light. So indeed, in other words, we want to do nonlinear optics at nanoscale. Nonlinear optics at microscale is already well developed. In our daily life, we are using it every day. If you look at these applications, you can realize that we are using them really every day in our life at microscale. But when we go to the nanoscale, the problem appears because the intensity of the converted light or converted frequency is so little. In other words, when we make these structures so small, so when they convert the light from one frequency to another frequency, the intensity or the efficiency is so little, so we cannot really use them. So there have been a lot of competitions and a lot of research, if you want to say that, to find the best materials. I also have been very active in that field from 10 years ago. These papers to using, for example, metallic hybrid nanostructures or breaking the symmetry of them. But the problem is that most of them, they get molten when you shine the high intensity laser. That's why a lot of research following those years have been done to realize what are the best material. It is very material science thing. It goes to the material science background. And then we also, similar to a lot of other people, we realize that, okay, gallium arsenide and gallium arsenide family in general, 3-5 semiconductors are, so this is something that perhaps you like. It is more chemistry now, yeah? These 3-5 semiconductors actually are the best material in terms of the nonlinear properties or nonlinear susceptibilities. So, but it was not a secret. From 1966, it was known that these materials have the highest susceptibility, but because of the problem of the growing them and the lattice mismatch of these 3-5 semiconductors, so it has been a problem. So then to find a way to grow them on the substrate which we want, like glass, quartz, and low refractive index substrate, magnesium fluoride, and so on. Understand that we can have the buffer layer, but still, you know, the handle wafer of all of these buffer layers, like gallium arsenide or indium phosphide, they are not transparent in the visible light, so they are not usable for us. So in general, I invented this technique to fabricate them on the gallium arsenide itself, then transfer them to the glass. So we managed to get them, and we managed to increase the efficiency. This efficiency 10⁻⁴, it may seem very little to you, but indeed is not. So just for as a reminder, the efficiency of Raman spectroscopy, which may some of you use, so is 10⁻². So we are not actually far away from that. So we have been trying to increase that to get that 2 orders of magnitude higher. So, but before that, in order to get money and resources to do high research on that, so we needed a good application. The way we do research is we propose an application to a funding source, we get them excited, they give us money, and then we do the research. And the application of these nanoparticles we proposed, it was for near-infrared imaging. So as you know, our eyes can only see less than 1% of the electromagnetic waves, which is visible light. It means that our eyes do not see 99% of the electromagnetic waves which are around us traveling. Indeed, if we could see them, right now we wouldn't be able to see each other, because between us, there are a lot of electromagnetic waves that are traveling. That's why your mobile phones, either TV, radio, everything is working, because they are traveling here. But we don't see them. But among all of these invisible electromagnetic waves, infrared, and in particular near infrared, it's very interesting and has a lot of applications. For example, so have you noticed that when you become ill So a little bit you become yellowish, kind of greenish something. Usually mothers can see that better than fathers. Because I don't see that in my son, and my wife said, "Oh, he's yellow." I said, "No, he's not." But anyhow, so this is actually the emission coming from our body to show to reflect our health. So in the visible, it's really difficult to see, but in the near infrared, it's very visible, and you can use it to determine the health of the person. Not only person, a lot of things like plants, fruits. By looking at a fruit in the near infrared, you can say whether it is ripe or not. Or by looking at a plant or crop, you can say that it is whether diseased or not. So what, for example, happened at the moment with these drones in India, I know that they are doing that. They have these near-infrared cameras attached to drones. They go around the field, and by imaging in the near-infrared, they can determine which areas some disease in the plants or crops are being developed. Because our eyes do not see, but near-infrared see. Today, in order to see the near-infrared, we need this technology. So, for example, if we want to see that in the closed distance, we need this kind of helmets. So what they do, they capture the near-infrared light, convert it to the electron, and then those electrons are projected on a screen in front of our eyes. So it means inside this helmet, there is a screen, and what you are seeing, this is an image of the object. It is not the object itself. So you are seeing the image of the object on a screen. So what we propose that we can use and engineer these nanoparticles that can convert the frequency of the light from near infrared to visible and put them on the surface of our glasses around us, like eyeglasses, windows, car windows, ceiling. So in this case, we would be able to see the near infrared light without converting to the electron. And the importance here is that in this case, we do not block our normal vision, because those nanoparticles can be designed in a way that will be transparent in the visible light. I will show you an example shortly. So it means that you can see visible and near infrared light, not visible or near infrared light. So it is a big thing for the industry, and it can really change our lives. So it worked. We proposed this idea, and we got very good money to do the research, and we continue doing that. So at some point we realized that just investing on the efficiency is perhaps not the best strategy, because we can increase the efficiency to some extent when these nanoparticles can convert near infrared to the visible light. So what we did, we used the frequency mixing. So it means that we got one more laser, one more light involved, like as a facilitator, that when, for example, we have very low intensity near infrared lights, then it can get mixed with this high intensity laser, and it can generate high intensity visible light, and at the end we filter out this laser. So it means that by having one facilitator, you can kind of compensate for the low efficiency of this nanoparticle to changing the frequency of the light. And here is actually the very first kind of prototype we showed. This target was shined around 1500 nanometer, and these images are taken at 500 nanometer. You see the greenish. So this is taken by a visible camera. The camera which doesn't detect the near infrared, but the input was the near infrared light. And it is taken in the visible camera. Of course, efficiency is still low. We cannot see by our eye, but the visible camera is the equivalent of our eye, but more stronger, more sensitive. So, and here I want to attract your attention to this green box, which shows that our metasurface in the visible range, which is 400 to 700, is more than 80% transparent. So it means that you can see this and also the near infrared light at the same time. So here it got a lot of attention, and it was picked by media, and we managed to continue this research. And you see, it's very recent research that we patented in the UK. So as you can see, the quality of images are much better here. So we are working hard on that to make it happen, and we are very optimistic that soon we will be able to really deliver these impacts. For example, if we can equip ourselves with some eyeglasses that can see the near infrared light, we can see inside the body, because near infrared light can see inside the body. You can see in the very darkest area, darkest nights. So in particular in India, I think it's very important because I was traveling to Roorkee yesterday and I saw a lot of animals, sometimes monkeys, sometimes cows. They come to the road and just imagine in the night time. So it's really, they are invisible. You cannot see them. But if you can upgrade your car window screens in a way that you could see in even darkest area without lighting on the road, so you can really decrease the number of a lot of accidents. And in general, you can see you can in the longer term you can massively save the energy because in the night time in a lot of rural areas we wouldn't need lighting because we could equip ourselves to see, because in the night time, even in the darkest night, there are a lot of near infrared out there, but we don't see them. But if we could see them with this equipping ourselves with this new technology, so it means that we don't really need the lighting. So this is also the second part of my research, which we use these nanoparticles to change the frequency of the light. And the last part is actually we use to change the intensity of the light, or we use them for biosensing, biochemical sensing. So these nanostructures are well known that they are very sensitive to the refractive index of the environment. So it means that if you introduce some new substances to them, so the refractive index change. And that change of the refractive index of the environment can change the optical properties. So by detecting these optical properties before and after introducing this new substance, you can determine existence or absence or of some particular elements. For example, this is again the paper from the time I was a postdoc at Imperial College. So we showed them that this kind of nanostructures, they can be used to detect the alkyl molecules, which are around 7 nanometer. They are 7 nanometer long, but optically, with these nanostructures, we can detect their presence. And not even that, graphene. Graphene is one single layer of graphene is only 3 to 4 angstrom, is even less than 1 nanometer. But still optically we can detect that. But both of them, nevertheless, they are in the solid state. So it means that the concentration of that substance which we want to detect is high. So it's easier to detect. But when you want to go to the gas phase, so it becomes very, very difficult because the concentration of those substances drops significantly. That's why these nanostructures cannot directly, straightforward, easily be used to detect those biomarkers or those substances in the gaseous atmosphere. So here is where we also develop this material. So this porous films, this is 96% porous titanium oxide and only 4% material, and we managed to increase significantly the sensitivity because we increased the sensing volume of that. And I'm not going to again bore you with the physics, but the result is that with this technique we managed to detect not only the existence and determine the different gases, but also the concentration of them. So what is the application? The application is here. We know that a lot of diseases in our body at very early stages, they release some biomarkers, in the body cells, in particular breasts. For example, breast cancer, for example, diabetes. At very, very early stages, way before when the first clinical symptom appears, they have some biomarkers in our breasts, but we don't have a technology to detect them today because the concentration are so little. So by this development and by this material, we are hoping that we can get to this area, that when by a kit like this, we will be able to detect those diseases at very early stages. I put this kit because the pregnancy test, this one, or even COVID kit, they work on in the liquid phase. So where the biomarkers are very concentrated, there are a lot of biomarkers. But with this new material, we are hoping that we can detect these similar kits that you can buy off the shelf, and just by blowing on them, they can tell the person that whether that person is developing some diseases, some diabetes or something. In particular, if you have some diabetes in your family, you cannot just go to the clinic and the hospital and say that, you know, I don't have any symptom, but can you please check me if I have any diabetes or not? And they say, just can you please go away? So then, but if you have, for example, this opportunity to go and buy the off the shelf one sensor and just do it at home, and they can quickly tell you at very early stages where even it's not in your blood yet, this difference in the sugar. So then it is actually can really save a lot of lives. Another very interesting thing in terms of the biosensing we do is protein sensing. Protein has the dimension of protein has the dimension of 10 nanometers. The diameters of protein are around 10 nanometers, so they are super small. So you remember I spoke about the optical forces that we use to move the item. So now we can use that optical force not for moving but for engaging. So we keep one single protein here like this, and then we don't let it move, and then we study it in its environment, in its native environment. We can study a single protein, which is very important because if, for example, you look at the protein under SCM or TM, you are killing it because it's the vacuum. You are looking at the vacuum. It doesn't help. But if you can keep one and then just try to see how it reacts to different drugs and so on, so you can do a lot of interesting things because a lot of proteins are responsible for a lot of disease developments. So it is a good analogy. If, for example, you imagine that the diameter of our Earth is 1 meter, the diameter of one protein is like one basketball ball. So we are speaking about that small scale, and we can capture it with my colleague Choi Pong, who is in my group. So we can capture it and then study it. So the first protein we studied was ferritin. Ferritin is protein that's inside our body. It controls the amount of our iron. So it stores some irons, and when you have the iron efficiency, it releases iron. So that's why this protein has two shapes. So when it is empty of iron or it has a lot of iron, they call apo and hollow ferritin. So with this technique, we managed to detect them and distinguish them, which one is apo and which one is hollow. And moreover, we managed to see when one is converted to another. So again, it is one single protein, and we can see it in the native environment. So it will help us to try different drugs, different temperatures, different stimulants, and to see when and how we can stop this changing, or we can stimulate it further. So it means indeed we can revisit our understanding about the causes and about the treatment of a lot of iron-related disease. And not only iron-related diseases. For example, there are some proteins called tau proteins, which are in charge of developing the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And as you know, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, the first actually changes in the proteins, in the tau proteins, it happens 10 to 15 years before you see the first clinical symptoms of the Alzheimer's in your body. But at the moment, we don't have a technique to detect that, or the knowledge to detect that, or more importantly, we don't have a technique to see how we can reverse it. But by this technique, we can trap one to see the one which is infected and going to go to all those conformational changes and try to see how we can reverse that. And here, I would like to pay my respect to my colleagues at Punjab University, who are just making these 10 devices to generate the power. So far, all of the researches, all of the application I was speaking about was about how we can use those powers, so for different applications which I named. So we are power users and they are power generators. So what they do with these wearable devices, they can actually generate power from the human motion. So it means that technically, if we can merge, which we are doing together, merge our researchers, so we can have some wearable devices that can be self-powered, and they can help to generate the power and use the power for different applications. For example, they have already done themselves the pulse sensors, and what we are doing together is self-powered protein sensors, that can be used for the harsh environment or athletes, for example, in a very heavy games and so on. And by wearing them, you don't need to have the constant charging or battery, so they can generate power from the body motions, and they can be used for the detections. So before I close up, so I just want to say a few words about the way we design these metasurfaces, because I spoke about a lot of applications, so how we use them for different applications, but it is important to design those metasurfaces that can be suitable, useful for those applications. So this is a separate problem, because the classic way of designing these metasurfaces or metamaterials is that you fix one or two parameters and just manually change different parameters to see that whether you can exhibit those resonances which you want. So this is very time consuming. This is very slow and low productivity. So what we are doing in our lab, we are marrying machine learning and photonics, and we use it for reverse design. So it means that we give to the algorithm, we give the optical properties which we need for certain applications, and then it tells us that what kind of metasurfaces we need to generate or exhibit those optical properties. So in the end, I would like to thank all my group members. So actually, all the time we are eating there. Sometimes we do some research too. So and they are actually the main people who are doing all of this very fascinating research and interesting research, and I'm the one who travel around and present the results. So they are actually the main source of the manpower in the lab to do all of those experiments. And I also would like to thank the collaborators which I have in different universities for the papers which I presented today. Today I presented a lot of papers, just a little bit from each of them. And these are the collaborators that collaborated with us to do all of those papers. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Hello. Congratulations on a marvelous assembly of so many near invention revolutions. Wonderful. I just had one small question. Is it possible to induce conformational changes within a multi-domain protein through light? I think that you get the drift of, see, in proteins or macromolecules, DNA protein interactions are really very significant. Protein motions taken to a level where you have molecular machine, nanomachine. If you can modulate movements through light and strategically incorporate it, whatever, nanosystems.
So you are speaking about detecting them or simulating?
No, actually manipulating them and making them into robotics. Ultimately, first would be a demonstration. Let's see, in nature, proteins move domains through ATP hydrolysis, calcium, etc. So many other. And that is all part of a big pathway usually. So suppose you take a model protein, let's say hemoglobin, okay, or some such thing, and put strategically placed nanoparticles and induce molecular motion through light. We are not looking at application. We are looking at a first demonstration of such a possibility. If somebody has done it, I mean, I would be very happy to know who has done it.
So far, what we do, we just more working on monitoring and detecting this motion. Actually, we can, what we do, we capture them by this optical process, and we measure the transmission of a single protein, and by the interpretation of that, we can see that at what conformational stage it is. So it is what we do with the light at the moment, but
I'm going one step further than that. I'm saying, is it possible to use that energy that you will be putting to make motions of repulsion and attraction?
So it is actually very interesting field, because anyway we are using the optical force, like adjusting that optical force. We can try to see whether we can do. Indeed, we just started this research. We are trying to different stimulus. For example, putting the magnetic field around this to see that whether the protein is react magnetic field or maybe just changing the temperature of it. Whether we are trying the different stimulus, and one thing in particular about the ferritin protein, which I spoke about the iron store. So we don't do that, but some of the researchers, because when ferritin releases the iron, it becomes like an empty cage. So, and many people use it as a carrier. They put something else inside it, not necessarily iron, then try to move it inside the body to some other places, and then stimulate or induce the ferritin protein to release that. It is very interesting direction, and definitely it's worth trying. So, but I want to emphasize that we have just started this direction, and we are very excited about the things we can do. Definitely, if we get any development or go any further, I will let you know. Thank you.
Have you considered this scattering thing also? Because you know that in simple that model that you have shown that particle is gathering light. Okay. It's a simple part. It's a simple part. It's fine. But if you are taking inside the body, there are other particles also. There are so many plasma and other cells and tissues. So there will be lots of scattering there. So that will just give them resistance to flow.
I just mentioned that it is just a human imagination to have somebody that can use without any power.
Yeah.
So this is the first step. But of course, when you start doing that, there are
Lots of resistance that will.
First of all, there are a lot of other elements because in our experiments, I get it. But it is just very beginning. It's the idea that what can use as empowerment for those robots. But if people are interested in making those robots and just for the real application, of course, they have to go to one of other. At the moment, we are not doing that, but for the suggestion that it can be used for the platform for the generation for the power of those objects and very careful calculations.
And one more thing that when you were talking about the metal surfaces, that the stimulant is temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at higher temperature, properties of material, you know, the silicon, there will be lots of electron scattering inside also, and that will behave differently. So how it is taken care of?
So in our experiment, I want to assure you that our sample will be tried 100 times. Every time it can give us the same result. Because here we are working based on the optical, not the refractive temperature. Actually the silicon has the highest optical thermal. So if they change the silicon, they change temperature, refractive will change. We are not going to based on the electronic properties, we are blowing for the optical properties, which is refractiveness, and that because the refractiveness is actually where because the generation new resonance is inside it, and
I know that silicon mirrors.
So we are not really going about the electronic properties of the silicon.
Obviously,
we just do the
its dielectric constant is also temperature. Silicon.
And yes, I'm saying that this is exactly what we use. We change, we heat it up as the heat, the refractive changes, and because of that changes, it moves. So this is how we use it to tune up.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Good afternoon, sir. So we discussed about tanks, the triboelectric nano generators. So can you discuss more about how they convert mechanical energy to electrical energy?
Dr. Gaurav Sapra, we are directly contacted. This is their research. So he and his group are actually doing a lot of research on that. So I'm afraid that I cannot comment much because I may say something wrong. This is the part actually you better you can contact him. They are super active, super successful in that direction, and I'm very impressed with the way. Because for example, when you change, they remove the wrist and the laser everything. They have enough power to turn on some LEDs, but how they actually do and what are the details everything. So perhaps I'm not the best person to answer. Yeah. But thank you so much.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to listen to you again. So my question probably I missed last time in your lecture is the selectivity part of your this sensor for the breath analysis. So how you are taking care of it?
So if you remember when I was showing different gases at different temperature and different concentration, so they have different properties. So you need to have this information beforehand. So you have this information because you know that this sensor technique works based on the condensation. And the condensation of different gases at different temperature and different concentrations are different. So when you have this information that, okay, so at this temperature and this concentration, you have this kind of optical properties there. So when you have this information in advance, so when you have this, when you are measuring the sample when you are using that sensor. So by getting that optical properties, then you can go back to your library, which in advance you have, and then compare it. But pretty much similar, for example, to electrometry when you measure some thickness. So you go back to the library to see that which of the gases or materials have this exact combination at this temperature, then you can determine the gas.
So the second question in the continuation of it, like for the connectivity-based gas sensor, there is always a calibration issue. And since you are doing in optical means, so how are you taking care of it?
This is actually a very good question. This is very valid question, and we get that question a lot. So this is just the beginning of this research. We have just proposed this idea to use this material, and now ourselves we are mainly interested not in gases, in biomarkers. So these biomarkers are easy because we don't have all of those interactions, and you can have some agents that that can observe certain biomarkers, exactly what you see in the pregnancy test or you see in the COVID test. So then you can target some certain biomarkers and you can generate those inhibitors there in your sensor so you can detect them. So our focus mainly now is to use this technique for biomarkers, but your question is valid and I think it needs more research.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such an insightful session. May I call upon Professor Meenakshi Goel along with our guests of honor, Dr. Girish Sani and Shri Sanjay Arora ji to felicitate sir. Ma'am, please.
I think one question which every student wants to ask, can I be invisible in the class? Is there an answer to it?
Pardon?
Can anybody be invisible in the class or in a 3D space?
Right now, of course, if you're Harry Potter, yes. What we do in the nanoscale? Okay, you are the master in nanoscale, so you and actually, congratulations for your group. I have to say that actually, all of it. It's really, really good. And I'm going again, I come back to you can ask my mom why, and I add the process in my next year of my. So Yeah, so I was saying that just we at the moment we are opening the nanoscale, it's actually what you mentioned, cloaking. The cloaking is a very big field of research with a lot of it's a little bit different from this. It's not changing the frequency of the light, it's just going to redirect the light around the object. So this cloaking is something that at some point it has been done at very small scales, but still long term. Long way to go to do, because the first thing is this people should come. Can you make a tiny invisible? That's about a camera. Second of all, even if I can, I'm not going to do a camera anymore, and that's it. So yeah, so but we are still confident.
Thank you, sir. May I call upon Professor Gaurav Verma to deliver a vote of thanks?
See, when you go through a very successful deliberation like this, it becomes very easy to say a token of gratitude to all those people who are physically present here and as well as virtually, because a lot of people joined online also. This event was in a hybrid mode. And because we are celebrating the 130th birth anniversary of Dr. Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, which is a matter of pride for all of us. Many thanks to our chairperson who led from the front, the team of faculty members who were involved, all my colleagues from the teaching and the non-teaching staff, all my students who were here, and all these people who have come from different institutions, cricket institutions, to attend and also deliberate and have a question answer session with all the luminaries. Dr. Girish Sani, who was all along, he's been a backbone of strength for us. Sanjay Arora ji, our alumni from 1987 batch. Both the speakers, the Bhatnagar awardee, Dr. Ashwani, who spoke from a very different field, and just before tea and after tea, we are switching to a different field called nano-optics. So from biology to physics, you can understand the kind of intersection research has and the common applications they can produce. So what we need to get is get a team together, get our mindset together, and work for the human race. And finally, Dr. Moshin, who's been a wonderful speaker. So thank you very much, and thank you all the colleagues and SPSTI, CRIC, Chandigarh Academy of Sciences, as well as INEAS to be with us. Thank you very much, and thank you. So we look forward next year to have another deliberation of this sort. Thank you, and Jai Hind.